Welcome everyone to the first Midweek with Max of 2026. It's going to be a very exciting year here at Hemi, and I'm sure the team has more to echo on that. But thank you all for joining us. Next week, I believe we are starting cameras on, so that's going to be interesting because I can no longer work from my couch. But what the hell? New year, new me. So, without further ado, I'm Rick, your head of community here at Hemi, joined by our lead moderator, Alex, JCV, Joshua, John Greenwood, and of course, our co founder, Max Sanchez, who is the Max in Midweek with Max. And let's kick it right over to him for some pleasantries, updates, and then we'll get into your questions.
All right, awesome. Happy New Year, everyone. Hope everyone had a good holiday, got some time to relax and recenter for the new year. So, a couple of engineering updates. Usual, we've been working, moving forward on ZK provability and working on HBit VM. As a reminder, you've heard me say this ad nauseum, but the white paper is out and we'll be publishing some more content around that as well. So, stay tuned for that. We're also moving forward with MinerFi, so working on a lot of the backend daemon pieces of that, and then we'll get the smart contract piece on that moving soon. Let's see, we've also been working towards getting the Jovian hard fork updated, so there's going to be a few Hemi-specific changes coming with that as well. And so probably in the next 2-ish weeks, we'll announce a timestamp for that with new builds for everyone to run for that. We're also finishing our migration to the new Hemi node repo, moving away from the local net embedded in Hemi network. So instructions for that will be coming as soon as we finish up final testing on that. And beyond that, good news on the VBK side, we will be launching the claim system or the registration for claim system because the claims are going to go out in batches, but the registration system this afternoon. So did final testing on that over the holidays and everything's looking good. So expect that going up by end of day today. And I think that's pretty much it on our side. We're also working on some small tweaks to the Bitcoin tunnel for usability and some speed and governance improvements, giving us a little more control over some of the economics. And that's going to be an interim upgrade between now and the full activation of HBit VM. It also provides a more graceful HBit VM upgrade path, so looking forward to that. And I think that's pretty much everything as far as updates. So I will throw it back over to Rick and we can start going through questions.
Sounds good, sir. All right. Let's see. Questions. The when section. All right. The first one just says Happy New Year's. That's not really a question, but Happy New Year's to you as well, and to all the amigos near and far. When will the next Stake Hemi Rewards claim be?
We were hoping to do that before the holidays, but it did not happen. So probably in the next week or so here in early January.
Incredible news. And I know you just covered it at the top of the show, but I would be remiss to not ask this, and also for all the new folks who just joined. When final VBK news and update?
So I'll give a little bit more detail on the mechanics here, just so people understand it. So we're going to be launching the registration process today. The instructions are a little bit convoluted, so I'm spending some time updating those to just make it easier for people to use. And then everyone can register as of today. There's going to be two different components. So there's everyone on the engineering team is going to love this, a Java jar file that you have to run to do some private key conversions and sign some messages. And then it's going to give you basically a payload that you have to go and send to the smart contract. The initial version of that is just going to be doing it through the Explorer, and then eventually we may do a easier to use UI for it. But if you want to be in the first batch of token claims, then you'll need to use the CLI tool and then just enter the data into the Explorer and send a transaction. And basically the way it works is you're taking your VBK private address, private key, and you're converting it to the same key format that Ethereum uses. And then you're signing a message that you agree to certain terms and that you want a certain EVM address to be the one that receives the token payout. You sign that message, you relay some stuff about the message signature and then the desired EVM address to the smart contract. It validates everything, and then we'll do the token distributions in batches. So once we get enough people who go and register in the contract, then we'll go and turn out the first batch. That's going to roll through everyone who's registered so far, do the token distribution, and then everyone registered after that will be in the second batch, so on and so forth. So short answer, end of day today for getting registered, and then sometime this week, early next week for doing that first distribution round, mainly depending on how many people actually go and register as part of the first round.
That is awesome news. VBK registration opening up by EOD today. So VBK folks, it is your time. I don't know why I just did that weird accent. I promise I'll never do that again. Um, I was thinking about Die Hard, and that was a really bad Alan Rickman. Whatever. Moving on. When will the season 2 incentives campaign start?
So we've talked about this before. We're not really at the moment doing a season 2 in air quotes. Pretty much all of what we're doing right now are with liquid incentives, and so instead of amassing up points and then getting an unknown amount of rewards in the future, we have a liquid token. We are doing more immediate feedback reward systems where you go say LP in a DEX pool or provide liquidity to a lending protocol or whatever, and you're getting, on a daily basis, a drip of known rewards for your position. So it's effectively season 2 in that we're past season 1 and we're distributing rewards using various mechanisms, primarily Merkle. But it's not formally a point season, it is a liquid reward season, if that makes sense. So we may do some stuff with points in the future, maybe some stuff around testing software, maybe the beta role, beta tester role, maybe some things that are a little bit harder to quantify and don't directly translate from, an exact amount of capital over an exact amount of time in a certain protocol with a certain risk profile. So we may introduce some points mechanics in the future. I know John's been putting in some thought on better ways to run points programs. And there is certainly some value in some instances where, again, things are either harder to quantify or you want to give rewards across a lot of different protocols or certain type of on-chain actions, or if there's ever a instance where we need to incentivize non-directly financially related activities on the network. And so I'll throw it over to John if he has any more comments on that, but we're in season 2, but it's not really a point season, it is just a liquid reward season, and that seems to be uh, giving a better user experience, especially for correctly financially linked, quantifiable tasks that people are currently doing.
Yeah, just to add to that briefly, I think some new methodology will be introduced with like an ambassador program, which I have not much comment on because I'm tertiary to that, but there's some mechanics there that I would like to try out, and then I think we'll get a better idea of what future rewards could look like based on how that goes. So have built out some infrastructure personally for points and rewards in the future. Whether we'll use it or what direction we'll go is heavily dependent upon kind of what outcomes look like for ambassador program related material and how liquid rewards continue. I will say that the adherence to like sticky TVL and directional TVL, as far as hey, put it here, and that works much better in much more reactive timing. It also has much more prevalence with liquid rewards. Merkle is seen as a very widely, so users that are not necessarily part of the Hemi ecosystem or are not aware of can easily become aware through Merkle, which makes it pretty easy to get users involved. Also, because you know exactly what you're getting out when you get in, I would argue that it's a very good mechanic to provide rewards. At the same time, totally understand kind of the meta of gamification and rewards programs, etc. We're working on something that can kind of highlight that while at the same time, having liquid rewards be the primary mechanism. So, as mentioned, have some stuff to test out in other aspects, primarily the ambassador program that's coming in a couple few weeks to a month, something like that. But I think after that we'll know more about what direction we can go in the future.
All right. Thank you so much for the clarity on that. And yes, the ambassador program is coming soon. I actually just pinged everyone in the ambassador program channel to see if we can just touch base on Friday. So hopefully we can have a little more info next week. All right. Over to, I think, Josh for this one. When OG roll?
Most likely by the end of February.
All right. So still on target for February. Perfect. When Christmas contest rewards payout? I believe that is being handled tomorrow. Correct, Josh?
Yep.
All right. The answer is tomorrow. They will be handled tomorrow. Moving on to the pop section. When oh hell. I feel like I've asked this question every day for like 6 years. When new pop payout algorithm? And I don't know why I find it so funny, Max. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's a lot of repeats because there's a lot of delays in certain things. So, pop payout algo. So we made some changes to the smart contracts, minor things, just basically adding events, adding some more helpful getter functions and stuff like that, for people to do like off-chain economic analysis more easily. So got those in over the holidays, updated those with tests. So we should be getting the new version of that deployed to testnet, and then the actual daemon update that activates that payout route. Should be doing that in the next couple of days here now that we finish some updates again to the contracts there that we wanted to make. And then assuming that all looks good and gets enough testing from the community over the next couple of weeks, then as soon as we get the audit back with the final version of the contract with those small updates, then we should be able to launch it in mainnet probably, call it third week-ish of January.
Right. Thank you. And speaking of testing, just a reminder to the entire community, the beta tester role is readily available, and we have a large number of the community already involved in that. We appreciate all your time, your feedback, and for testing out the new stuff. There will be new activities coming down the pipeline for that, but for now, it is the one standard activity that our folks are beta testing, and I just want to say thanks. And if you're into it, Josh just posted how you can apply right in the chat. All right, moving on. When will we be able to swap pop points to Hemi?
This will be coming definitely before or at the latest at the V2 activation of the pop payouts algo on mainnet. So hoping to have that by middle of this month, but drop dead would be whenever we activate the V2 pop payouts algo in mainnet, which again we're targeting for end of January, hopefully week 3-ish.
All right, January and February shaping up to be very busy months here for the team and the community. When will locked Hemi tokens from pop mining be unlocked?
Same answer for that one. So both the optional VE Hemi unlock if you want to do it from the original position from the Genesis drop, as well as the pop points earned post Genesis and making those liquid. Those will both happen at the same time.
All right, I got a question that came in from chat from Alpha. As we know, Hemi is focused on institutional BTC stacking. How can we contribute as builders? Are there any bounty programs, bug finding initiatives, or other ways to contribute besides open source development?
Good question. So if anyone has anything that they're interested in building, definitely reach out. We are doing one-on-one bounties, grants, stuff like that, depending on what people want to build. We will be getting a more formal grants and bounty program together. So one of the things that we're going to be doing, not sure on the exact time for this to launch, because a lot of the people needed to do it and think through economics and everything have a lot of other stuff they're doing in the next few weeks here. But we will be launching a more formal grants and bounty program for developers, or basically we'll have a list of things that we'd like to see built in the ecosystem. So a lot of those are going to be HVM focused applications. And then we'll also have some other ones for maybe DeFi infrastructure that we think would be useful on Hemi for somebody either to own from existing projects or launch their own version of that primitive. and each of those will have some sort of grant amount or range of grant, maybe depending on the complexity. If it's something that could go in a lot of different directions, and then people could apply with their plan for building that, and then they'd be able to get on a cycle of some initial upfront tokens once we vet their plan for the idea, some tokens at when the project reaches a prototype phase, and then some additional tokens when it's actually launched in production on mainnet. And then that will also come with, we're still working out the exact details of what this will look like, but additional items that sort of support people launching projects on the network. So that could be, again, depends on the project too and what makes sense, but could be additional incentives for them to grow their user base. Could be us subsidizing smart contract audits. Could be us doing co-marketing. Could be us helping with maybe other non-technical pieces in some way. And so we will be putting that program together and launching that in the relatively near future. That'll give people a little bit more clarity on some of the things that we want to incentivize. And then obviously, I'm sure people will come up with cool things that aren't on our list. So we'll still have a system for anyone who has any other ideas to submit them through that same system and discuss them and come to some sort of a bounty or grant, depending on the scope of the project, the timeline, how many people are working on it, the team's track record, things of that nature. So short answer, if you want to build something today, definitely reach out and we can chat through what that would look like. And then in the relatively near future, we'll have a more formal program for that, as well as sort of fixed, explained bounties of specific things that we want to see built or launched in the ecosystem. And some of those, a lot of those will be actual smart contracts, DeFi primitives, things like that. But some of them may be other, quality of life, usability things, data dashboards, educational content, things of that nature as well. So again, if you're interested in building today, definitely reach out. We'd love to talk to you, and then stay tuned for that more formal program coming out probably sometime this month or early February.
And also, while building is great, if you like breaking things, we do have our bug bounty program on BugCrowd. So if trying to find security holes and other places to, misuse things or find holes in our stuff, BugCrowd's there. So please, Joshua, do you have the link to that by any chance? You could throw in chat, because, we want people poking at our shit on there too, not just, building's not the only way to contribute and help. And, that is a engagement where there are rewards for it. So.
Right. Yes, please go in and break things. Any updates? Oh wait, excuse me. Oh wow, a lot of things just came in. Any updates on Hemi Station?
I don't think anything too formal yet. We got a lot of great feedback from the community, so we have gone through some of that and discussed it and looked at what pieces we may want to build and not want to build. I think a lot of the focus has been on the ambassador program and also the OG role, which not a lot of resource overlap there, but there is some. So not a lot of updates on Hemi Station. It is definitely something we do want to build, and maybe in the next few weeks we could put together sort of our initial selection of our own ideas and community feedback for what we want to see, and maybe also work that into the bounty program if there's parts that third parties could contribute to that. So no major update there, but definitely something that's still in the pipeline, and hopefully we'll have a better update for that in the next few weeks here.
Amazing news. Right. How often does Hemi engage external auditors for A, high value smart contracts, B, all other smart contracts, and C, all Hemi operated infrastructure? When will the next audit reports be publicly available?
Good question. So the high level answer generally is we do audits whenever they're needed. There's a couple areas that doesn't apply, which I'll get to in a minute, but generally whenever we make a update to a critical smart contract, things like, for example, the pop payout system, the new V2 that we're launching. Now that we're launching that, we're working on getting a final audit of the updates made to that. That'll be public. Like I mentioned earlier, we're also working on some small changes to the Bitcoin tunnel system. So obviously that's critical infrastructure. So that's going to get a full audit from multiple firms that'll be publicly available before we launch that update. As for non-smart contract things, or there's some ancillary smart contracts for very simple things that we either don't get audited or we do an internal audit. We do have a very capable smart contract development team, and so a lot of the things that if they don't write it themselves, then it's something that I write or somebody else on, say, protocol engineering writes. We'll have them do an internal audit if it's a very low risk sort of a thing, like a module for distributing tokens automatically to say, payouts or something like that. So there's a few smaller components that are very low risk that we just do internal audits on. And then for non-smart contract stuff, and this is a new announcement going into 2026, we are going to start doing semi-regular daemon audits. So daemons are a little bit of a different animal when it comes to auditing because they change a lot more frequently and they're a lot more complex. And they also work in the real world with a lot of things that you don't have to think about in the smart contract sense. So, smart contracts, you just have to think about data in, data out, different actors, ordering of things, all the standard EVM attacks, reentrancy, compromises, and being able to trick contracts into doing weird things if you send them unexpected tokens or tokens that don't follow the ERC20 standard. And there's, depending on what you're doing, there's a pretty standard list of stuff you have to think about. On the daemon side, they're in some sense lower risk because they run in a different threat environment, especially the way that L2 daemons operate. The majority of critical data that they're validating is either at the current moment signed by centralized sequencer or is coming from Ethereum DA from an RPC endpoint. And so, you don't have quite the same attack surface as you would with, say, something like a direct peer-to-peer daemon like, Bitcoin D or something like that. Obviously, that's going to change over time as the protocol evolves and we do get decentralized sequencing, decentralized publishing and batching. Then there's more things, especially with sequencing, that you have to think from a perspective on the consensus layer and also like data validation, denial of service, stuff like that layer. But anyway, getting a little bit sidetracked. So we are going to be starting to do daemon audits. Again, daemons, they change a lot, especially opgeth and optimism upstream. They make a lot of changes, fixes, bug improvements. So we're not going to be doing a re-audit every single time there's upstream changes to pull in. But with major releases or major updates to our modifications to those upstream daemons, as well as major releases of the Hemi network repo, things like TBC that's embedded in opgeth, the pop miner, the daemons that run the pop miner, the routes through TBC for the new V2 pop miner to communicate with Bitcoin, all of those things will be included in the scope of that audit. We are going to do it in several phases. So we're going to start with TBC because that's probably the largest component and most impactful because of the way that it's integrated into opgeth with the HVM precompile calls and the deterministic progression. We're going to be getting that audited first and then expanding that out to more of the daemons and Hemi network. And then finally, we'll do the full audits, at least of our change set to upstream optimism and opgeth. And we'll schedule that probably around the code that's going to go live for the Jovian hard fork. Audit may come a bit after the activation. We'll see about timing. But we will be starting to do daemon audits. And then infrastructure, we have done infrastructure audits. We also do a lot of things internally to make sure infrastructure is secure and locked down. So we're continually improving that. We probably will be starting to do some regular cadence of infrastructure audits as well. But the current priority is getting the new daemon audit flow up, and then we'll look at doing more formal infrastructure audits.
Infrastructure is also fundamentally different than smart contracts in the sense that no matter what, a smart contract by its very nature is meant to be running out there in the, wide world. Or what in the wide world of the EVM it runs in. But, it is always meant to be random non-permission parties can always interact with a smart contract by design, because that's the whole damn point of a blockchain. So it lives in it's very different than your infrastructure, where there are parts of our infrastructure where, yes, you want to fix every problem, but at the same time, you're more worried about what can penetrate your infrastructure, because most of the infrastructure by design shouldn't be accessible to the outside world or to outside of very limited parties. So audits are great, but for infrastructure, there's things like pen tests and other things that are probably more everything, anything you can do is good, but those probably buy you a lot more for the amount for your effort than audits on the infrastructure side. Just because, again, infrastructure is doing something different than a smart contract. It lives somewhere else.
As I think, John, you've highlighted on past episodes, part of securing infrastructure for the long term is actually getting rid of the infrastructure. And so as we decentralize more components of the protocol, as we no longer run the sequencer, but instead it is a decentralized sequencer that anyone runs if they stake VE Hemi. When we have decentralized batching proposing, ZK provability for settlement back to Ethereum and Bitcoin with HBIT VM, a lot of the critical components we're running start to become totally irrelevant. And as we decentralize, the attack surface of infrastructure goes way down. And so that's going to be a shift in how we approach infrastructure as well. The end goal is basically we are running a informational website and a portal that people can access and use the network. And, some bootstrapping nodes, things of that nature, but nothing that is critical and has a much smaller, obviously less complexity, but also way less interest in somebody actually trying to compromise it. So again, in the current situation, audits are great, pen testing is great. Those are things we're going to be starting to be doing more frequently, but the end goal is to make it where we don't have any critical infrastructure that we're running, and it really is just all completely decentralized.
All right. Our next question. How does Hemi secure its portals and applications, given that recent attacks on Safe and other protocols have targeted web applications rather than underlying infrastructure?
Good question. So we've done a lot of work on what I'll basically sum up as the supply chain for all of our code, but that includes front-end code, and that's where it's probably the most impactful, just given what people are currently trying to attack. But it wouldn't surprise me if 2026 becomes a year where we see the sort of NPM style attacks start to be more prevalent in other languages and targeting other types of code bases, or actively getting ahead of that as well. But a lot of industry standard practices for package management, automatic dependency analysis for vulnerabilities, alerts for that, automatic patching of that with not GitHub Actions, but GitHub workflows and workers and automated tools that will identify any packages with security issues, automatically alert us, get them patched, get them deployed. We also have a very robust permission system around how things do get deployed. And so one, compromised developer can't just go in and start arbitrarily deploying new front ends or back ends or whatever, any part of the infrastructure. And so anything that is deployed gets reviewed by humans before it actually gets deployed, so that anyone trying to do some sort of automated, update to malicious dependencies, things like that, would not be able to get through. Things like rules and policies for dependency updates. We're also going to be, hopefully in the next month or two, moving over to PNPM, which gives you a little bit more control. So most of the exploits we've seen against front ends has been with new releases of libraries and stuff that have been just launched, just built, just deployed. And so being able to enforce rules around how old something has to be before it can be used as a dependency and anything compiled for production, things of that nature, will also help. But currently a lot of things for that software supply chain management. And then obviously on the infrastructure side, making sure that anything that gets deployed is actually what multiple team members expect should be deployed and have approved that deployment.
Multiple eyes on it is a very big thing because, you know, requiring more than one person to look at something before it can be deployed, limiting automated things, it's friction. It slows things down. Absolutely. But, you know, the longer you look at this, the more you start to see that a huge thing that comes with that repeats over and over again with security problems is speed. So many problems come from forcing something to be rushed, having something quickly, using a dependency that just came out because that's where the, you know, malicious code has been hidden. Adding a little bit of friction and extra eyes on things. It's simple, it's low tech, and you know what? It solves a tremendous number of problems. Always, and this is beyond just our infrastructure, but just in your general dealings with crypto and computers in general. If someone is trying to rush you, that's when you have to worry most. Urgency is the enemy of security. Like 99% of the time, maybe even more.
Right. We have a couple more questions on deck. Excuse me. Is it possible for the Merkle campaign to be moved to the Hemi dashboard and for the Hemi team to conduct an audit of the campaign?
Not sure what you mean by an audit, if you're talking about like auditing their contracts and claim process, stuff of that nature. I mean, Merkle's very widely used, and if something did go wrong, it would probably become very evident very quickly, and we would stop using Merkle campaigns if they started breaking or not giving appropriate rewards. We are working on doing some integrations of the Merkle campaigns into the Hemi portal. So the first area you might see that, and again, beta testers will be probably the first ones to see this feature, but then once we launch this more generally, is integrating the Merkle campaigns for the staked Hemi BTC product. And so once we do that integration, there may be maybe a low lift to make the Merkle rewards in general more accessible from the dashboard. So that is a good usability thing to add. So it is something that's on the radar. But again, probably the first kind of step one of that integration you'll see is direct Merkle claiming of rewards through the state Hemi BTC product when that launches publicly. But yeah, as far as an audit, I mean, Merkle has been, if you have specific concerns or, you know, examples of projects that's gone wrong and have been an issue, definitely let us know. But I'm not aware of any. It's been used by and continues to be used by a lot of very large projects. It has been running for years, as far as I know, without incident. So if you know otherwise, please let us know. But we're definitely not going to be doing some sort of like, you know, forensic audit or something of third-party tools like that. But again, if something does go wrong with it, then we would just stop doing Merkle incentives and move to a different system.
All right. Just before we move on to the next question, I just saw something in chat to address. For the HBUSD contest, it's while we are totally going to take community upvotes into account, the contest itself was a request of Jeff. So we forwarded over the contest link to him to get his feedback. Also, team feedback is going to be very important in this. So we will be announcing that shortly. I don't have a date for it, but I'm hoping this week we'll announce the two winners for that contest. Yeah, like I said, community votes will definitely be a factor, but Hemi team are really going to make some calls on that contest specifically. And that is actually a good segue into the next question, which is what is HBUSD and when will it launch?
So I'll talk to the super high level HBUSD. It's I would call it an economic experiment that Jeff came up with, which is a one-way burn of Hemi tokens into this HBUSD token at the current spot price of Hemi based on Oracle feeds. And so the idea is not that it's you know, going to be, we're not sure what we're going to do with it in the ecosystem. It's kind of more of an experiment. We want to see what interesting use cases people find from it. could have some applications in potentially more sophisticated burn mechanisms in some way where the tokens are burnt, but there's this sort of representative token of their value in time that can still be used for something or distributed. So it's an economic experiment. I think if you go to the repo for HBUSD, there's some more information if you're interested in the underlying tech mechanics. Again, relatively simple. Put in Hemi tokens. It looks at what those tokens are worth in USD at the current point in time based on Oracle, and then mints you the equivalent number of HBUSD. So it's a one-way mint stablecoin, or not stablecoin, but USD value in time pegged to a burn token that could have some interesting economic use cases. But again, there's no specific thing that we're planning to use that for other than initially doing the purchase, I believe, of the HBUSD NFTs as sort of a initial experiment there, and then as people either in the community or on the team come up with some creative use cases for it, then we'll think through those and maybe get those deployed. But at the moment, more of an economic experiment.
All right.
So
Thank
don't
you
go
for that,
burn
sir.
all your Hemi tokens into HBUSD. Understand what
Yes,
you're doing, play around with it, but yeah, it is one way. Be aware.
yes, definitely do not burn everything, but definitely have some fun. Um, when is HBitVM going live on Hemi?
We're targeting Q2, so the biggest part of that is finishing up the ZK proof system. So we're making progress on that, but if you read the HBitVM white paper and look through what we're ZK proving, it's pretty complicated, and so there's definitely a lot more work to finish up on that end. And also, there's a lot of constraints that you need to get right in the system, so that is going to take time to get audited appropriately. Anything ZK, it's very important to get it audited by people who actually understand ZK, and not just from the engineering implementation perspective, but from the theory perspective, a security perspective of what happens if you don't properly constrain inputs, what happens if you're not properly, especially for more complex ZK systems that have multiple different types of proofs that are validated together, and some common knowledge of multiple different things is gleaned from combining what different proofs claim about different things, how you have the separation of constraints between those different proof systems that are being aggregated together like we are doing in HBitVM. So it's complex, and the auditing of it is complex and needs to be done 100% correctly. So again, targeting Q2, but just be aware there is a lot of complexity there, and some of that may be unknown complexity that only rears its head once we get into the auditing stage, and maybe there's something that we didn't think of that complicates how we have to do our ZK proof composition or something like that. So again, target Q2, but that is a wavy date just because of the complexity, and we want to make sure it's 100% right, because once we launch, it's not like a normal ZK system is the other thing where you could launch a contract on Ethereum that does ZK validation of, I don't know, base, for example. And then if there's a bug in the constraints that you enforced or whatever, you could have an admin, for the initial duration of the protocol until it gets more decentralized, where the admin can step in and update ZK verification parameters or whatever. When we launch HBitVM, the ZK verifier that is essentially baked into the Bitcoin script, using air quotes a little bit because that's a bit of a simplification, but that ZK verifier is fixed. You cannot make any changes to it. We do have a system for allowing updates through what we call a bootstrapping ZK verifier, and that's actually not just for updates if there is a security issue of some sort with the ZK proof system that we don't catch, which obviously doing a bunch of audit should prevent, but also it's a necessary component of the ZK proof system, because again, you have this one-time configuration on Bitcoin, and then that vault may live for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, and you cannot update the ZK verification parameters of that proof system at all. And so the problem is networks like Ethereum, Hemi, and possibly even Bitcoin are being updated, making changes to the protocol that changes the actual ZK proving flow, the ZK proving algorithm that you need to do. So say a perfect example would be when Ethereum with the Petra upgrade changed the way that attestations are formatted. They created this aggregated attestation. They already had aggregation, but they aggregated the attestations in a way that was more efficient and basically compressed from having, a relatively large number of attestations per slot in each epoch to generally one when things are behaving well, maybe two or three if there's some disagreement on unsafe tip. But that would have changed had we had HBitVM launched, last February. We would have needed to update the state transition function for Ethereum to properly account for being able to parse that new attestation format. And so just one contrived example, because it's relevant to consensus and some of the stuff we're doing with HBitVM and some of the stuff we're proving about Ethereum consensus. And so in order to be able to make those updates ad hoc, even without having to update the underlying Bitcoin ZK verifier, we have this bootstrapping wrapper around it, which lets us essentially have governance vote on updates to ZK verification parameters. And then the ZK verification program that actually, quote unquote, runs on Bitcoin or is validated by Bitcoin is sort of a meta layer of ZK verification orchestration. And that can dynamically update the parameters that it uses during execution based on initial verification parameters that it uses for very old Hemi blocks at the time when it was launched, and very old Ethereum blocks and Bitcoin chain state through HVM and HVM precompiles. But then, as Hemi governance over time approves updates to the ZK verification parameters for the Ethereum state transition function, the Hemi state transition function, things like that, those are output as part of the proof. Technically, it's part of the statement and then it's validated, but essentially they're output by the proofs of Hemi state. And so that bootstrapping ZK verifier is able to update the parameters that it's using in a way that still fits into having a single fixed ZK verification program, ZK verification parameters hard coded into Bitcoin, because the parameters describe a program that itself validates and can dynamically update ZK validation parameters of different chunks of the system, Hemi chain state proofs, Ethereum chain state proofs, HVM precompile calls, things like that. And so I forgot why I got off on that tangent. We're talking about the timeline for it, but I was adding that bootstrapping system adds a bit more complexity and thinking on the auditing side as well, but does also let us do some level of updates if something does go wrong. So there's some flexibility there. Obviously, intending not to need it and to do sufficient audits beforehand, but again, as chains evolve and protocols change, that mechanism will be necessary as well. So we got to fully think through and make sure that that system is robust enough to handle any possible protocol upgrades on any of the network sides, and that again adds some complexity as well. So targeting Q2, but that's sort of an overview of the complexity involved in HBitVM. And again, there are some unknowns in there, especially with the bootstrapping verifier and how exactly how flexible it is in what kind of updates to ZK verification parameters can be done. So probably a longer answer than we needed for that, but anyone who's interested in some of the engineering challenges on the HBitVM side may have found that interesting.
Max, same question, but please explain it as if we were five. I'm totally kidding. Please.
Q2, hopefully, but it's complicated, so stay tuned.
Perfect. All right. What is Hemi's biggest goal for the year ahead?
Let's see. I'd say definitely on the tech perspective, HBitVM, that's a huge unlock, and that kind of implicitly covers ZK proving in general, which also improves the speed and security of the Ethereum tunnel as well. So HBitVM slash ZK everything, I'd say that's, in my mind, the biggest engineering goal. It's the one I'm most excited about. Beyond that, I'd say, looking later into the year, sequencer decentralization, that's still a huge item that would radically improve the decentralization posture, but also start creating actual additional revenue streams for VE Hemi stakers. So looking forward to decentralized sequencing, and then with that, decentralized publishing, which is the Batcher proposer roles. And that's also a lot easier to decentralize once we have ZK provability, because the total attack surfaces of what people can do with being able to be batchers and proposers, which we call publishers, we combine that into one role, is dramatically reduced once you're actually ZK verifying everything end to end about the correct canonical state of the Hemi chain. So I'd say for 2026, those are probably the two big macro goals. On the tech side, HBit VM / ZK provability and decentralized sequencing and publishing. And then looking a little more forward into 2027, that's hopefully the year of Chain Builder. And hopefully we have some interesting experiments around that. I'd like to do some Chain Builder stuff this year, but obviously those two things that I mentioned are the priority for sort of finishing up all the major items that we want to do on the Hemi base layer. Obviously, there's going to be a forever ongoing list of additional improvements to make, adding new features to HVM, things like meta protocol indexing, things like the automated transaction callbacks on Bitcoin event triggers. It'll make Bitcoin DeFi even easier to build, more composable, have access to more data. MinerFi I'd mentioned as it's very useful, and it goes beyond MinerFi. It's a combination of a fast bridge for Bitcoin. That's basically it's a liquidity wrapper around the Bitcoin tunnel, and then also a automated DeFi routing system. And so the end result of that is basically instead of having to use a wallet that is available in your browser and then go to the Hemi portal and connect that wallet, Unisat or whatever, to the portal, then enter amount of Bitcoin and then click submit and then submit that transaction and then wait. And then, generally the Bitcoin tunnel system confirms the deposit for you, but theoretically you may need to send an EVM transaction to confirm the deposit. And then withdrawing, you have to go through a relatively long waiting process. The fast bridge component of MinerFi will let you easily onboard and offboard Bitcoin very quickly. So onboard it just by sending it to a Bitcoin address. So you can do that from any wallet. You can easily do it with wallets that are in cold storage, things of that nature. And then offboarding, very similar to the current withdrawal flow, but it'll be a lot faster and a little bit more robust and configurable, if that makes sense. So I'd say that it's a smaller engineering lift, which is why I didn't initially mention it, but it's a great usability unlock for the network. And I will just highlight there, we call it MinerFi because that was sort of the initial motivation for building it, was creating a system that would be able to support Bitcoin miners the way that they mine at pools, which means they have a Bitcoin address configured in their pool, and then every day Bitcoin gets sent to that address, and we want to make stuff automatically happen with it. But it's the protocol itself is bigger than just Bitcoin miners. It's not only for Bitcoin miners. It's anyone who wants to either A, just on and off board Bitcoin onto Hemi faster, easier, but also B, people who want to kind of like, you could have something set up with your bank or whatever where 5% of your paycheck automatically gets invested in a mutual fund. You could do a similar thing where, every week you withdraw X amount of BTC from your exchange account, always to the same Bitcoin address. You already have all your portfolio strategies configured. You want, 25% of it in state Hemi BTC. You want to auto convert 25% of it to stable coins, and then you want to take the rest and do some, debt one-sided like DEX LP pair. And then every week as you're trading on your exchange, you withdraw, say, X amount of your trading profits as Bitcoin directly to that address, and it automatically gets composed into Hemi DeFi. And so you don't need to be a miner, just anyone who has Bitcoin on the Bitcoin network who wants to easily onboard it into DeFi, automatically earn yield on it, have some cool portfolio management tools. So I'd say that's a major unlock more from the usability, customer acquisition, getting liquidity in different parts of the Hemi DeFi ecosystem, especially Bitcoin denominated liquidity. But it's a smaller technical lift, and we should see that launch before HBit VM and ZK provability and all those other features.
Looks like we have time for one more. Here is a good one. Is Hemi using sophisticated AI agents to pressure test Hemi's code? My understanding is that Claude rolled out a closed program where they used AI agents to exploit code and found known and unknown exploits in platforms from last year.
That's a good question. I will also, although he's not directly working on this from a security perspective, I see Ryan Charleston joined, and he's doing some internal initiatives. So I'll throw it over to him in a minute as well. On the development side, we are starting to integrate some AI tools. Claude Code with Opus 4.5 is in my opinion, and I'm not haven't been keeping as abreast of the AI development stuff as, some people who have been playing around with these tools, for half their working hours for the last 2 years. But Claude Code with Opus 4.5 is definitely a leap ahead of anything else we've seen. We looked at some AI tools in the past for mainly, automating writing additional test cases for things, being able to quickly spin up prototypes, maybe do some lightweight security audits or, sanity checks of code, and we were not very impressed. Now with Claude Code, we are looking at different ways to integrate it into the workflow. Right now, everything that we're currently doing is pretty much developer driven. So, and don't worry, we're not writing production code with AI and clicking commit. We're using it for types of things like, writing additional test cases to flesh out edge cases that we specify, or using it to draft a function and then we're writing our own tests around it and reviewing it manually. So we're adopting it very slowly and conservatively, but there are a lot of good things that it looks like Claude is capable of doing. I have played around with it over the holidays, doing some audits of smart contracts. So I wrote a couple smart contracts with known vulnerabilities and simple things like, a ERC20 or E3 entrancy attack that could be used against a contract, or a missing modifier on something that should be permissioned for governance, or like low-hanging fruit that any auditor is going to catch. But I did run that through Claude, and it very quickly found and proposed the correct fixes for those. So promising, but again, need to do more work on really vetting what it's capable of and also looking at automations for it. So short answer, no, we're not at the moment using any AI tools unless, maybe some of the stuff we have in GitHub is technically AI in some sort, but it's, very basic, or like dependency monitoring, things like that. And I don't even think those use any form of AI, but we're probably marketing it as such because that's the hot thing to do now. But as far as automated vulnerability analysis, not currently, but that is something that we do want to add because it's a low risk thing to add. Really, the only risk is that it gives you false positives and wastes your time. So it's not nearly as risky as writing production code with AI and pushing to production, which obviously we want to be a lot more careful with, and I'd say ultimately never do. But that is something that we are looking into, and it looks like with some of the recent stuff over the last, call it 6-7 weeks with Claude ever since Thanksgiving, there is definitely a lot more promise there than we saw before with previous tools we analyzed.
Wait, I wanted to add something to that.
Okay, please do, sir.
So, I I mentioned the bug bounty side a lot because I really want people to participate in the bug crowd one, and clearly people are using AI tools in that when they're looking at our stuff for bug bounties. So, the AIs in quotes are definitely going after our stuff, and honestly, on the bug, hunting search, mostly AI seem to be able to, you know, they're a little better than maybe a little faster at using Burp Suite than most usual pen testers, but it's not the like dramatic difference that they're not doing something crazy. This is not, Skynet going after things. They're running the same kind of tests using things like Burp Suite that traditional testers were doing. They're just doing them faster and doing them a little more methodically than, the script kiddies of old did. So it's great. They're a useful tool, but, whenever Google or someone else talks about their advanced AIs doing some crazy shit that no one's ever heard of, that's marketing hype. It's bullshit. It's people using tools that are better than they had before to do things slightly better than they did before. Absolutely. But don't totally buy into the marketing hype that as soon as someone says the word advanced and AI next to each other, I assume that whatever you're going to say after that is probably not the most accurate, useful, or, you're overselling something. So assume someone who says advanced in AI within 2 words with, the Hamming distance of like 2 words or something like that of each other. It means they're selling you something, not that they're trying to teach you something.
And also to add on to that, maybe at some point we get super intelligent AGI that runs on a brain the size of a planet or whatever, but at the moment and probably for the foreseeable future, AI is really it's a force multiplier, but I heard a great quote of AI amplifies what you're already doing in the sense that, if you're doing something smart and you're being careful and considerate about it and you understand it and you're, putting in the time and effort to create something interesting, AI is going to amplify that and accelerate it. If you're doing the opposite and you're putting together something, sloppy that you don't understand, that you don't fully think through, that you're kind of throwing together without a plan, AI is going to amplify that. And so you sort of get more of what you're already doing if you're using the tools correctly. And you have to be doing, following best practices, doing things intelligently, approaching things methodically, doing iterative development, things of that nature to actually get any good results out of these tools. At the moment, they don't replace you. They don't, solve your problems for you, accelerate you if you know how to use them and know where to point them at certain things that you need them to address and work on. I was speaking well of, Claude earlier, and so far been very impressed with it, especially compared to other AI tools. And it's definitely an accelerant if you know how to use it right. But if you aren't using it correctly, or if you're not very carefully looking at what it's outputting, it's garbage in and garbage out. And so if you, put it in plan mode and you tell it, I want to make a protocol that does ABC, and, you don't fully flesh out that spec, or even if you do, you'll still have some issues you have to go through and review and understand. You have to understand how the code works. You will find issues with it. But, if you don't put together a good initial plan or you give it, not formal instructions, basically anything less than you would give an actual developer who you're sending off to go develop some component, what you're going to get back is probably worse than not getting anything back because it's going to have security vulnerabilities. It's not going to reason about the governance model correctly. It's not going to reason about, different timing of the way different messages are sent to the smart contract, different states updated, and you can get it to do very impressive things around those. So you can say, focus specifically on the timing of governance updates and make sure there's, here's some invariants, verify that these are true, and then go write a comprehensive test suite that tries all of these different combinations of different interaction patterns with the smart contract. It can reason through it. It might even find some patterns you didn't think of, and it'll add those in. You've got to be directing it very precisely into not just building something, but how you test it, how the testing framework works. You have to review how those tests work. You have to understand how the actual code it wrote worked, reason about it yourself. And there's an element which is solvable, but you just need to be aware of it when you're developing software. Of if you have if you didn't write the code, you don't have as good of a mental model for it as code that you actually wrote, obviously. And so even if the AI wrote the exact same code you would have written, you're going to have less of an understanding of it and less of an ability to reason about it unless you're proactively really reading through it, understanding it, maybe writing some test cases yourself to validate your assumptions about how this thing that I wrote worked. And then you can proceed with reasoning about it and directing it for how to improve it, iterate, incrementally iterate on developing new features, stuff like that. So a lot of great tools. Cloud Code has definitely changed my tune on the role of, AI and complex software development, but you do need to be very careful, and it is still a garbage in, garbage out system at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I'll add, just to give you an update on my end. So I am actually working on a internal project I call Hemi Intelligence, which is really kind of a comprehensive look into how we're all using AI on the team. Um, mostly focused right now on my side with, how it affects our workflows in marketing and BD, content, etc. But it could expand beyond that. Obviously, as Max mentioned, they're starting to use it for different specific use cases and with code. And I actually have played with Cloud Code, even though I'm not a developer, and it is amazing. So I'm actually learning and I'm able to use it to do certain small tasks and that I previously would not be able to do. So that's really exciting. And so just looking at the different standalone tools as well as tools we're already using that have new AI features added. Down the road, as I start to build out a knowledge base that has all of our like branding, information, product positioning, all that good stuff in it that we've just revamped in the last month. That goes into, not just helping us internally, it could help content creators. Some of this stuff could eventually lead to like public-facing AI tools and applications, agents, automations, all that good stuff. So yeah, it's just something, a big undertaking that's just going to be a big part of my focus this year. So,
All right. Thank you so much for that, gentlemen. Um, that actually, we are a little over time. I apologize if we didn't get to everyone's questions. I would ask you to kindly record your questions and post them for next week, and I promise we'll get to them first. So that way nothing gets missed. But thank you all for attending. Thank you for our moderation team who worked through the holidays and continues to keep our community safe. Thank you to the entire team, the entire community. Now let me turn it over to the rest of the team for outros, and we will see you next week.
All right, awesome. Thanks everyone for coming to the first midweek of the year. Next week, we're going to be experimenting with cameras on to make it a little more interesting and engaging. So stay tuned for that. Looking forward to uh, being a little bit more interactive in that way. So look for that next week. As mentioned before, HBitVM white paper is out. So if you have any tech questions about it, please look through the white paper. And if you have any questions, more than happy to answer them in any midweeks. As we get further along with development, we actually have, a ZK prover for this module to show off and stuff like that. We may do additional AMAs to kind of talk through some of those, individual components in more detail, or sort of the orchestration of them together for the proof system, things like that. So definitely stay tuned for that. We'll also be publishing more digestible content around it. So white papers covers everything, but it's, dense. And so we're working on some other content that's more of a higher level explanation that, you can understand everything, kind of the pieces and how they fit together and the motivation and purpose of the system without getting, lost in the weeds. And so stay tuned for that. One of the things we may do, again, this is a may, so we will definitely have simpler written content, but we may also do some like video explanations of, kind of walking through visually how the system works and kind of explaining it high level. So if you're interested in that kind of content, let us know. And if there seems to be enough interest, that's definitely something we could put out as well. And then, for the Veriblock side, stay tuned in the Veriblock Discord for the registration process launching this afternoon. And I think that's pretty much it. So looking forward to seeing everyone next week. Hope everyone had a good holiday and Happy New Year's.
Happy New Year, amigos. Be on the lookout for some new contests coming up, as well as some further updates. And until next week, we'll see you in Discord. Take care, all.
Happy New Year.
Talk soon. Happy New Year.